First met James when he was well, actually, when I first met James was when you were in Tralee, working with Jigsaw in Tralee, collecting data down there, and then he subsequently moved to the Headstrong main office, and I got to know him quite well there. And he was, you've given me your biography, and I think this is interesting in talking about opportunity to a range of strands of education sector, from a one-year FOSS course in Kerry, which is interesting, so thinking about where we just talked about earlier, in outdoor education, post-leaving certificate in sports and recreation, then went on to complete an ordinary degree in health, fitness and leisure studies, followed by an honours degree in physical education, and in 2015 completed a master's. So I think that's a really interesting story, in that you start in a, where lots of people think, oh, I didn't get into what I wanted to in the very beginning, and how am I going to get there? But so you've taken your own journey through the different aspects of our third level sector. And has worked in lots of different roles: welfare officer in IT Tralee, area development officer for West Cork Kerry with the No Name Club, sports inclusion disability officer with Meath Local Sports Partnership, education coordinator with Jigsaw Kerry, when I first got to know James, youth engagement coordinator with Jigsaw National Office. And that was actually where I was going to stop, because that's really where I got to see the work that James does with young people. Headstrong at the time, and still has, a youth advisory panel that actually works with Headstrong, now called Jigsaw, in terms of its direction, how it does its business at every level, from advocacy, research and service delivery. And it was the work that James did, which was really powerful work, working with young people and giving them a voice, a really important voice, not a token voice. Because I know from going to Australia, there are areas where youth are supposedly embedded into a structure, but actually when you go and you meet them, they're actually not. That they are consulted to some extent, but not actually core to business. Whereas I think, James, you really brought young people into the core business of Headstrong. And then of course you decided to leave and headed off for a while to health promotion officer with the National Youth Council of Ireland. And it was actually that role that I felt was very well suited for this afternoon, because again our paths crossed at that stage, and the work you were doing there. And then finally came back into Jigsaw, and is now the project manager with Jigsaw Dublin City, and they're currently located within DIT, so which is nice to see that they're bedded within the infrastructure there. So you've had a really interesting journey in terms of your educational journey, and a multi-journey in terms of working in this space. So I think you're very well placed to talk about promoting mental health, people's mental health. So I'm delighted to have you. Thanks, James. And when I asked James would he come and talk today, didn't even hesitate and said yes.
You don't say no to Barbara. Thanks very much, Barbara. God, you can do my intros for everything from now on. So I suppose maybe just a bit of a background about myself. Barbara kind of said some of it there, but as a teenager I was a bit of a brat, but also, like most teenagers, kind of would have went through my own kind of difficulties. And I suppose school wasn't really for me. I attended, I went, and I suppose my leaving cert points, which were in the very low 100, would have reflected that as well. But I suppose I always knew I wanted to do something, so I was shipped from Wicklow down to Kerry to do a one-year FOSS course in outdoor education. So lived on Valentia Island for a year, and really kind of got a sense of, actually I do want to do more with my life. But actually in the race of points in college, there was very few opportunities. There was a lot of doors closed in my face, and you can't do this, you can't do that. And I was very lucky to attend Tralee Community College, which is now Kerry College of Further Education, and did a one-year sports course in a sports and recreation course, a PLC course. So a lot of those young people that we're speaking about here, I attended one of those colleges, which was fascinating because it showed me that actually education can be delivered across a range of different areas, and you can excel in a range of different areas. So that gave me that open door to then go in and actually do a college course, because the great thing about a lot of PLC courses is it provides you with those kind of points and skills and knowledge you need to get into college. Did my degree, which I absolutely loved, and was very fortunate then to come out with a first. So from someone who had 100 and something points on my leaving cert, to get a first was kind of a big achievement for me, and something I was very kind of thankful for. And then it led me into full-time work, obviously, but then it pushed me into working with young people, and I've just completed my master's a couple of years ago, and the thesis topic I looked at was youth participation in the design of services. So how do we actually listen to young people? So when I was kind of doing this presentation today, a lot of that background kind of came through, and what I kind of thought we'd do is kind of have a bit of a journey around mental health and how we support all young people's mental health, but how we think about maybe young people within those colleges of further education, and what are the differences, what are the similarities, and how can we support their mental health as well. So this is Connor. Connor didn't get the points that he wanted to get into UCD, and Connor's parents kind of said, well look, you need to do something. If you're living under our roof, you need to do something. So they looked around at a lot of different courses, and Connor decided he was going to do a 1-year PLC course in business to see what he was kind of interested in. Connor has a girlfriend who's called Laura. Connor loves hanging around with the lads. The best thing he liked about school was hanging around with all his mates. And Connor's just an average guy who likes watching soccer. But Connor could be any one of us, or Connor could be any one of our friends who's attending either college or college of further education. And his mental health is affecting him. There's things going on in his life where his mental health has been affected. I suppose Connor grew up though in an era where mental health was very much stigmatised. Madman in the cockpit, 1,200 killed by mental patients, and that kind of media that tells us that mental health is very bad. And it's very interesting today, Sea Change have released research that says that 56% of people working within Dublin would not be willing to work with someone with a mental health difficulty. So this is what he's kind of grown up with. But there's a bit of a shift and a culture change now with the likes of Brezzy, with the likes of our bloggers and YouTubers speaking very positively about mental health. And has anyone seen Inside Out? Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it, or even for your students. A very good portrayal of mental health and the difficulties we can experience. So I suppose what we would like to say in Jigsaw is that good mental health is not about having no mental health problems, but it's about how we react and cope with difficult situations while maintaining a positive outlook on life. So we can go into a lot of World Health Organization definitions about what mental health is, but when we work with young people, we say that it is that. It's not about having no mental health problems, but how do we react and cope with those difficult situations? And it's not always easy to maintain that positive outlook on life, but how do we strive for it? We work a lot with young people, and we use the analogy of a phone a lot, and we are all a phone. Imagine we are all a phone now, and we all have loads of different apps that are going on, and some of our apps we really like, and some of us, they deplete our energy. And if we think about mental health in that type of way, what do we all love our phones to be?
Interactive and responsive.
Interactive, responsive, fully charged, okay? So most of us love when our phones are fully charged. But likewise, when we think about our phones, we also need to think about our mental health and the mental health of those young people who attend our colleges of further education, our brothers, our sisters. We all want their mental health to be fully charged, and we all need to look after it. Because I suppose what happens when we don't fully charge it? It can get darker and darker and darker until we need to replug or we need to recharge. And we really work in Jigsaw around that kind of ethos of early intervention. So if we can keep our charge going, brilliant. But unfortunately for many of us, we can just slip down and slip down and slip down until we lose that charge. And I suppose we all need to recharge in some way, shape or form. And that's what we're going to speak a bit about today. How can we recharge our mental health? How can we support our mental health? We are very much based on the mental health is like a scale, and we're all on that scale no matter what sector of education we're in. But there are so many differences about what's going on in our outside lives that can affect that scale. And it's interesting that you were asking the question around the mental health of young people within colleges of further education versus maybe college, and Barbara was able to give some kind of contrasting stats there. So for some people, they may be lower down in the scale than other people. We in Jigsaw bow down to the Bible of My World, and My World was research that was done in 2011 and released in 2012, and I'm looking at Barbara if I have any wrong answers. And this really captured what was going on in the world of young people in Ireland. So rather than us as adults say, well, this is what we think is happening. And this looked at over 14,000 young people between the ages of 12 to 25, and that was broken down into an adolescent sample of those school-going ages, and then that young adult sample of that kind of college-going age. And I suppose why we find this so useful is that it's able to give us a picture of, well, what are the mental health needs of young people, and I suppose primarily what can kind of hurt their mental health. When we ask the older population what hurts their mental health, what do you think is, I love crowd participation, what do you, and I gave you a quick hint there, what do you think were the things that they said hurts their mental health? So the college going age, what hurts their mental health?
Exams.
Exams?
Yeah. Relationships.
Relationships? Money? Anything else? And do you think that would be the same for young people in colleges for further education? Yeah, a lot of it transfers across, and I suppose that was one of the things I was conscious of when I was doing this today, that we also need to see that young people in colleges for further education are very similar to all other young people. It was something that I reflected on when I left my PLC course and got into the college. Because I was an extra year out, I was a bit older, but also there was a gang of us that came from PLC courses all around the country, and we were referred to as the PLCs. So there was nearly like a stigma of coming from a PLC course, and that's what we would have been referred to by some of the lecturers, but also by other students as well. So I suppose what hurts their mental health was college. Money, huge thing. Work, family, relationships, job, exams, and friends were a difficulty as well. Interestingly there, future was one of the things, and that's something that I could really resonate, especially coming from a PLC course, trying to get into college, but then also figuring out, well, what does my qualification, what does this year allow me to do? So that fear of the future. And I would have found that a lot with my friends within the kind of college of further education sector. For us, a lot of us, it was a stepping stone to somewhere else. So it was like, well, where is that stepping stone going to lead us to? Also within my world, Barbara looked at as age increases, self-reported levels of seeking social support decrease. So what age can you see there where the kind of levels decrease of seeking that social support? Yeah, so what do you think is happening in that area?
Become independent.
Become independent?
Leaving school, friends.
Leaving school, friends. And there's a huge kind of, well, there you go now.
Yeah.
And I suppose what we need to think about is the different sectors that we're leaving people, well, there you go now into. And how are we supporting the mental health needs of all young people? So for instance, if you go into a lot of colleges, you'll see large counselling services, medical centres, you'll have doctors, you'll have a lot on campus. But do a lot of colleges of further education have that access? No, not at all. And that's what I found very fascinating. When I was in my College of Further Education, my supporter was my tutor, but that was generally what was there. Then I went into a college setting and I kind of went, oh, there's a counsellor here. Whoa, there's a really cheap doctor I can get access to. And the world kind of opened to me for free medical care for a couple of years. But it's quite interesting. Young people at the very same age, and we've highlighted that they're probably going through more difficulties around their mental health. But is the service kind of provision there for them in the same way? And I can see some of you kind of shaking your heads there saying no. So if we go back to, what's his name? Connor. If we go back to Connor now. Connor's started the PLC course, but things aren't going well for him. He's kind of struggling as the year goes on. He is missing the lads. He loves hanging out with the lads, but he doesn't get to see them as much. And the other thing that's kind of happened, a lot of the lads went on to third level, traditional third level. So he feels there's a bit of a gap there. He doesn't feel he's as good as the rest of them. So there's a bit of a gap there. How is he going to get all these assignments done on time? So there's quite a lot of assignments that he needs to get done. So that stress and that worry about getting them done. His mum and dad expect so much from him and he doesn't want to disappoint him. He knows they would have loved him to go on to a traditional third level college, but he didn't have those opportunities, so he doesn't want to disappoint them. And then I suppose Laura has been off with him the past 2 weeks. She's not getting in contact. So where do you kind of think his mental health is at now?
Pretty low.
Yeah, it can be pretty low. Would he have a diagnostic disorder? No, probably not. But does he need support? Yeah, and sometimes we can kind of generalise problems and say, sure, look, we've all been through that. Geez, he'll get another girlfriend and sure, look, just get your assignments done. But we also need to realise about that spectrum of mental health and how we're supporting it. But as a result, drinking is becoming a problem for him. He's trouble concentrating in college, he's skipping lectures, he's worried about the workload, and he's spending more time alone. So he's isolating himself. drinking is becoming a bit of a problem, and we've such a culture in Ireland of Asher's grand, college, like 4 years, rag week, that's it, drink is normal. But actually drinking isn't a normal part of our lives, and drinking have a very negative impact on our mental health. And for Connor, the danger is some of his friends are starting to smoke weed a lot more. So there's that danger that actually he may start going down the illicit drug route. So as you can see, Connor is starting to move down the scale of mental health there, and I suppose that's where we need to start worrying. And in our project Jigsaw, we're very much based in early intervention. How do we get in as early as possible? So I suppose you can see all the thoughts going through Connor's mind now. So he's going to fail, so what's the point in staying on the course? He feels he's letting everybody down, his family are stressing him out, and he just feels he's letting everybody down. And I suppose he's feeling alone, he's feeling that kind of isolation, and we can feel that at any point of our life, but particularly in college it can be quite an isolating time. So I suppose, what type of advice or guidance would you give to Connor in this situation now?
To talk.
To talk? To who?
Find somebody, maybe a tutor, friend, family member.
Tutor, friend, family member?
Counselor.
What other advice or guidance would you give him?
Try changing perspective on things.
Okay, try changing perspective on things. Any other advice or guidance?
Maybe help him to assess the situation.
Yeah, maybe help him to assess the situation. And I suppose when we think about what could be stopping Connor, so let's just say we know Connor needs to get help from someone. What stops young people in all colleges, all around Ireland, whether you're in college or not, what stops us talking about our mental health?
Stigma.
Stigma? What else?
Anything that's actually that serious.
Yeah, not thinking that it's actually that serious. Sometimes it's only at crisis point we realise, oh, I need help. What else is stopping Connor?
Not knowing about services they're able to.
Yeah, not knowing about services. Sometimes, and it's something that I found through all my courses that I've done, that you go in and on the first day you get bombarded with, here are the services. And then you're expected to just remember everything, and I've always reflected on that when I work with colleges and colleges of further education, to say, would you ever do a top-up around Christmas? Would you ever do a top-up session just before the exams? Because to actually retain all that information is quite a lot. And one thing that you'll notice now is we're sending so much mental health messages everywhere that actually the young people I work with say it can be very confusing to figure out where to go. But everything you said is right, like where do you go if you need support? And I suppose when you think of traditional third level education sector like UCD, there is lots of routes into the counselling service, the GP service. But within our colleges of further education, where can, for anyone who works in the sector, where can you refer young people on to?
Counsellor.
Counsellor?
Guidance counsellor.
So guidance counsellors. So again, looking at where we can refer on. Sometimes it's the embarrassment and that fear and that kind of worry. For some young people it is that sense of, oh my God, people are going to talk about me. There's a real kind of shame and stigma about it. And for some people, people feel that the traditional support is this. It's lying on a couch, it's talking to somebody like that, and there's that worry and there's that fear. And I suppose when we look there, we have an adult there, and one of the things that was great about the My World research was it found out the difficulties going on in a young person's life. But the thing that we've really focused on from a Jigsaw perspective about the research too was the presence of one good adult, and what the presence of one good adult can do in a young person's life. So again, it came from My World, but the presence of one good adult was a key indicator of how well a young person is connected, self-confident, future-looking, and can cope with problems. Why do you think that is? Why do you think having one good adult in your life is a good thing for your mental health?
Heard.
Pardon?
They feel heard.
You feel heard? Any other reasons?
So is it stable in that, like everything else in the universe is like the stage and weird, that's it?
Yeah, it's just that stability around it. And when the young people were asked, who do you think they reference kind of most as their one good adult?
Heard.
Yeah, parent. Which parent? Yeah, generally the mother. I'm right, Barbara, haven't I? Yeah, so generally the mother. But I suppose one good adult can be anybody in anybody's life. It can be a sports coach, it can be a teacher, it can be a tutor. It doesn't always have to be a parent. It can be from a range of backgrounds. And unfortunately, the research found that the absence of one good adult was linked to higher levels of distress, antisocial behaviour, and increased risk for suicidal behaviour. So again, we can all think about our own lives growing up and that importance of having that one good adult in our life. And for some young people coming to your courses and coming within, they might not have any one good adult in their life, and you could be that person.
When I'm feeling down and I want to cheer myself up, I listen to music. That's my thing. Getting a new album, going to see a show, singing my heart out, it all helps.
I get out, I go for a walk. It really clears my head.
I do something that puts me in a good mood, like a game of soccer.
I meet up with a few friends. People who make me feel good about myself. My friends are always there for me.
Dance, definitely. It helps me switch off. Get lost in the music and lost in the atmosphere and just have fun.
I go out for a run. That helps me. I remind myself that whatever it is, it will pass. We all have ways of coping when times are tough.
But if all the things that usually help you just aren't working, might be a good idea to talk to somebody.
Talking to a supportive adult can help put things in perspective.
I know I can count on my older brother.
One good adult in my life. Someone I know I can trust.
I talk to my dad.
I have a great relationship with my ma, so I talk to her.
I talk to one of my teachers.
I talk to my guidance counsellor.
I usually talk to my sister.
Talk to an adult. It can really help.
There's always someone around who can listen and support you.
Who might that person be for you?
So again, I think this video for me really emphasises how research just can so well translate into that everyday practice. So from my world, we were able to find out a key kind of finding there, which means a lot of the work of Jigsaw now, we develop training and skills around supporting those one good adults, meeting with young people to identify who those one good adults could be in their life. And I suppose when we all think about our own one good adults, we'll all have one or two, and for some of us, unfortunately, we may not have any. Some young people have lots of one good adults. It also doesn't mean we're a bad adult. Sometimes in our talks with parents, the parents will go, but they don't talk to me, does it mean I'm doing something wrong? It just means for whatever reason, they may connect in with somebody else that bit more, and sometimes parents find that difficult. Well, why don't they share everything with me? And sometimes we share with parents, maybe you don't want everything shared with you. So there's that balance. But for Connor, it was Anna, who's his tutor, teacher, lecturer, and again, depending, there's different titles, but I suppose for him it was his tutor. And I suppose she noticed that he wasn't handling an assignment, and she was able to say to him, is everything okay? But it opened up that door for him to share the difficulties. And I suppose what Anna needed to find out was what were the main things that supported his mental health, like what were the positive things. So what do you think from the My World research for the young adult cohort, young people said helps their mental health? And these are things that Anna wanted to find out so that she could help them as well. So what type of things do you think they said?
Hobbies?
Hobbies? Pardon?
Friends.
Friends?
Guidance.
Yeah, guidance, and that could probably come as part of talking. So what they had said here was friends, talking, music, which is such a large element, family, exercise, reading, walk, think, sleep, and one of the things we present these to young people as well, and we kind of say moderation with things as well, so not to go into your lectures and now say, well look, that bald fella said sleeping's really good for my mental health, so I'll just skip a few lectures. Everything's in moderation. But I suppose we need to figure out what actually supports the young person, what supports their mental health. And I suppose other things that Anna would have looked at with Connor was actually we have a 5 a day for mental health, which is kind of internationally recognised around what are the things we can do in our everyday lives that can promote and support our mental health. And these are everything day things that we can introduce into our College of Further Education, into our school, into our everyday home lives that can help boost those protective factors and support our mental health. And these are around connecting. And one of the things we talk a lot about when we work with young people are what are the best forms of connecting. And interestingly, when you tease it out with young people, a lot of them say to us, they agree that online isn't the best way to connect. It has a very real purpose and a very real place in their lives. And it can be really important for them to be able to reach out for online help and supports. But some of them would reflect as well that the importance of connecting face to face with people as well. So it's about how we keep that balance on it as well, that we don't move everything online, but we realise that real space that is needed. But also that we reflect that actually that human connection is very important for many young people. So one of the things Anna would have reflected with Connor is how is he connecting in with his friends from school? How is he connecting in with parents? And they arranged that every week they would have a weekly check-in just to see how everything was going. So at least once in a week he was connecting in with that one good adult in his life. The other thing that's really good for mental health is how we learn, how we're able to support learning and developing learning. And actually learning is a really good thing for our mental health. And I presume in exam times it's not the best, but generally it is found. So what she would have worked with him in is a plan on how he was going to get his assignments in. Also a plan of how he was actually going to get some extensions and deadline. But so the learning was spread out a bit. The learning wasn't becoming a pressure for him, it was more even. Being active, and I suppose look, we all know it. If you read any of Brezi's book, if you listen to anybody who talks about mental health, the importance of being active. And that doesn't mean that we have to be Olympic standard. That could be about getting some air, taking a walk, going for a run. And one of the things she figured out was that actually he wasn't going to five-a-side soccer anymore, and she encouraged him to rejoin five-a-side soccer because he got the social connection, but he also got that physical activity as well. Another one of the 5 a day that we would really reflect on is the ability to take notice. The ability to take notice of ourselves, our emotions, the surroundings around us. And in such a technological age where we're constantly going and moving fast, where we're able to kind of take notice. And interestingly, what Anna was doing in that College of Further Education was they knew there was a mindfulness program happening as well, and a lot of sectors are now starting to bring mindfulness into education to give that grounding and that sense of, are we taking notice, are we living in that present kind of moment. And then lastly, one of the things that the last 5 a day is give. Actually, how much giving can actually support and help someone's mental health. So what Anna kind of realised was that Connor also needed stuff to kind of focus on and kind of develop. And within that College of Further Education, they actually also did a lot of charity work as well. And she was able to connect him in with just a few hours volunteering a week, which again gave him that human connection, but also gave him a sense that he was contributing and that he was doing something well. But that's what worked for Connor and that's what worked for Anna. And I suppose if Anna had made a decision that Connor needed extra supports, that's where she would have guided him towards the guidance counsellor, towards his GP, towards mental health supports that are in the community. And what we'd always recommend is that if you are looking at mental health supports, we'd always direct people towards yourmentalhealth.ie for a range of services, and also towards the young person's GP. If Connor got that support from one good adult and put kind of coping strategies and mechanisms in with the range of difficulties that he had, how do you think Connor would be doing? Yeah, generally good. Hands up here who's ever had a problem or a difficulty. And hands up here who's ever shared that with somebody. And how does it feel when you share it? It can get a bit better, depends on what you share. But generally what we are trying to encourage as many people to do is talk about our mental health. Talk about when things aren't going well, so we can signpost and get you to the right support as possible. Because I suppose the big thing that Connor needed and wanted, he just needed somebody to listen to him. And sometimes in the fast-paced world of academia, no matter what sector we're in, it can be very hard to sit and listen and talk to our students because there's so many deadlines, there's so much to happen. Even we work with schools now, and at the moment we get no replies back from schools because they're just so busy with the exams coming up. And I suppose we had a young person who said it to us, for years I'd loads of people to talk to me, but nobody who would listen. And I suppose that's what we need to look at. Are we listening to our students? Are we listening to the people in our lives? Can you see any other word there?
Still?
Still? Yeah, silent. So sometimes we can think we're listening, and sometimes we think we're promoting a listening culture and a listening environment. But actually, are we? Or are we just encouraging silence? And I suppose we would always say that there are some tips on how to be a good listener. And one of the things we would reflect on, and our clinical staff would reflect on this a lot, the importance of listening more than you talk. And I suppose, think about it the next time, so even someone in your family comes to you, how quickly do we want to rush and solve the problem and give advice or guidance? Sometimes all anybody wants is to just silence, listen to me. And I suppose giving the young person time, no matter what sector we're in, how do we give that young person time to really share their problem and their difficulty, rather than having it boxed off of, you've 2 minutes and I have to meet the next person. And that's difficult to balance in the struggles of everyday working lives. And I suppose don't judging them. And I suppose we have that a lot with young people where they're worried that their problem will be judged, either positively or negatively, that actually look, that's not a problem or it could be way worse. But the importance of realising if it's a difficulty for them, it's a difficulty that needs to be solved. And I suppose the do's and don'ts for kind of supporting young people, no matter where they're at, is listening. And I suppose looking for windows of opportunity of when and how we can support them. And we would always encourage people to ask direct questions. And also with asking direct questions is listening to the answer. How many people here would go about their day going, hey, how are you, how are things? But really not really want the answer and would keep moving quite quickly through it. And I can see you smiling, so there's probably a few of you in the room. And we'd always encourage people to comment on what you see, make a direct observation. So for Connor, I notice you're not coming to class. I notice you seem very down. I notice you're not hanging about with anybody at lunchtime. And I suppose being aware of body language and what we're kind of seeing in body language that may be unusual. And that's what Anna noticed, that Connor's body language was very despondent. It wasn't what it would normally be. And what Anna did that really worked well was asked how you can be of help. And that's something that I've reflected even with the team I work in. They'll come to me with a range of difficulties depending on the day. And now I've just kind of learned not to come with solutions and say, what do you need from me? How can I be of help to you? Because a young person may say, I need to get to a GP, I need to get to hospital, or I need a cup of tea and someone to chat to me. And one of the things we need to do though is we need to encourage help seeking, and realising that help seeking is a very important path. We would find sometimes young people are very resistant towards going through formal help seeking because they're nervous about mental health services, they're nervous about going to their GP. But I suppose our role as One Good Adults is to encourage and facilitate that help seeking. And the main things we'd say not to do is not to judge and not to overreact. And I suppose that overreaction is very important as well. Some of our young people who come to our service would reflect on that. They share a difficulty with their mother or father and the parent overreacts because they think of worst case scenario. And I suppose it's important that we don't avoid the issue, because Connor avoided the issue for a period of time and the problem got more and more difficult. And I suppose it's also important we don't dismiss their concerns or talk just about the problems. I suppose Anna could have just focused just on Connor's difficulties and problems, but really looked at that positive kind of path forward. And I suppose it is important that we don't rush to solve the problems. It's also important that we don't tell them they're wrong to feel a certain way. So for instance, if Connor breaks up with his girlfriend, there could be a range of different approaches people could take. Some people would say, get over it, you'll be fine. And sometimes we can use cliches as well, look, just plenty more fish in the sea. But we do need to realise that common difficulties not tackled and not dealt with early on can lead to more long-term kind of mental health difficulties. One last word of advice I suppose we'd always have for One Good Adults, and any of us who are working with young people would be, is that what does this image represent, do you think?
Did you look after yourself first?
Yeah, and it's something that in my last role within the National Youth Council of Ireland, I worked a lot with people in different education sectors, youth reaches, community training centres, and one of the things that they would have reflected a lot was the pressure and stress of holding so much kind of distress from young people, because you're perfectly placed every day in a class group of 30 to probably know a lot about their lives. And a lot, when I was in the National Youth Council, a lot of people reflected on that. My own mental health is suffering a bit, or I'm feeling that I can't get them into services, I'm worried about them at the weekend and stuff like that. But if we're not looking after ourselves, how can we ever look after and support a young person in their lives? Because I suppose if we don't look after ourselves, it can lead to this, or it could also lead to this. And I suppose we do need to look after ourselves. I suppose, but there may be times with a young person's life that you may not be able to advise, support or guide them, and you may think, I need a mental health service, or I need somebody who may be able to support. And one of the things we'd always say is referring back into the GP is really important, but also Jigsaw is a mental health service for young people as well. So we're based in 13 areas in Ireland at the moment. So we have a project in Kerry, Galway, Roscommon, Offaly, Meath, Tallaght, Clondalkin, Balbriggan, which is our North and Gaul project, Dublin 15, and I'm the project manager of a new service in Dublin City, which covers the Dublin City kind of council boundary line. And at the moment we're able to accept referrals from Dublin 1, 2, 3, 4 and 7 and 8, and that's for any young person who works, lives or studies in those areas. But we also deliver a lot of training across the city. And what Jigsaw provides is direct one-to-one support with a clinical support worker, and they come from a range of backgrounds. Some of them have come through UCD, and they could be clinical psychologists, counselling psychologists, occupational therapists, social workers or mental health nurses. And they will provide that direct support to a young person. We are early and brief interventions, so we work with young people who are experiencing mild to moderate mental health difficulties. And if any of you would like a more in-depth what is Jigsaw presentation, we can come out to your service to deliver that so you can understand our referral guidelines or pathways. But the main thing we do is provide one-to-one support. We also signpost on. So for instance, if a young person came to us and was suicidal and had a plan, we would signpost them on to their GP, to A&E or to PA to house, so that we're able to get them into the right service. And one of the things we do a lot of at the moment is advice for parents, teachers, tutors, who may ring us and say, I've Connor here, he's 19, I'm worried about him for these reasons. Another thing that we can offer, and we're offering across Dublin City, is a range of different trainings. So we offer a one-day training for staff on understanding youth mental health, which really looks at what we've done today, but spread out over a day and really in depth. We've done this in a variety of sectors, in community training centres, youth reaches, colleges, and that's a free one-day training that we have across Dublin City and in our other services. If you do that one-day training, you can then progress on to our second-day training, which is Minding Youth Mental Health, which really looks at building the resilience in young people and how do we support them. Both those trainings are completely free, and we offer them free of charge. So literally you just contact me and say, I'm based in this area, are you able to deliver this training? I'll be able to then say, yes, you're definite, we can do it, or on another one of our Jigsaw services may be able to do it. We've also realised the benefit in, and a lot from my world research about that one good adult. So now what we've started doing is tailoring some of our trainings to the one good adults, and that's where, again, research has kind of flowed into practice. One of the things we do is a 1 hour workshop for coaches. We're going to be rolling them out with some GA clubs in particular in the next while. What we find is there's a lot of young guys and young girls who are participating in sports and physical activity, and actually they go to their coaches. So we're doing that. And what we've realised as well is there's a lot of people in the sector who are working with young people who are feeling their own stresses and pressures, and we offer an hour workshop on how to be self-care from one good adult. For the young people themselves, we offer a 45-minute talk that we do in school groups, and that's generally for 13 to 17-year-olds. And just the past few months, we've developed 2 new trainings, and one of them is for My Mental Health, What Helps. So that's for the informal education sector, and it's a 2-hour workshop with young people about how do I look after my mental health, how do I support myself. And then there's a similar one then for the more formal education sector, and then that's very similar methodologies, but that's based for that kind of older cohort as well. The My Mental Health and the 5-a-day would fit perfectly within colleges of further education. The only thing that you would need to decide if you're working within that sector is, I prefer the more informal approach for this group, or I prefer the more formal approach. But we deliver those workshops and trainings because we kind of realise that no matter how nice Jigsaw is and how nice our staff are, the majority of young people will never walk through the door of a mental health service. They will go to their one good adult. Here are our contact details. We're open from 9 to 5:30, but again, you'll get us on our website, jigsaw.ie. And I suppose here are our main contact details. If anyone did have any questions, obviously there'll be a question and answer session then, but if anyone did want us to come out and share about our service a bit more, we're interested in any of our trainings. Even what we've done with some groups is we've said to schools, community training centres, outreach, if you do have a class that, let's say maybe you're doing social care or anything like that, and they wanted to come in and have a look at the service, that they might have a deeper understanding of a mental health service then. So that is me, so hopefully that's done. Yeah.